So the next slide shows us a little bit of the philosophy of what has to happen when a SIDS death occurs. So first we have the baby's age. Babies that are in the first 6 months of life are in the critical development period. So they're learning and they're developing and they're growing at a very rapid rate. The highest risk for SIDS is between 2 and 4 months. 90% of the babies die before 6 months of age. So when they're in this critical growth period, their system is unstable because they are growing so rapidly. Second piece of the puzzle is you have the vulnerable baby, which is the baby that has this defect that we just talked about, in addition to being a defect that happens during the prenatal period. Researchers are also looking at, are there any genetic risks to this? Right now, there's not any evidence of that, but it is something that you're looking at. So we have the baby in the critical growth period. We have the vulnerable baby with the defect. And then the third piece that comes into play and can cause death is the stressful environment. So the things that cause the stressful environment are tummy sleeping, exposure to tobacco, soft bedding and blankets, bumper pads, adult bed situations. All of those things prevent the baby from getting access to fresh air. So that's our main goal as we look at how we're going to create a safe sleep zone, is to make sure that the baby has as much access to as fresh air as possible, does not get overheated, and is not exposed to tobacco. And I don't know, our audience are, if you're new moms or pregnant moms, but taking the tobacco a step for that, tobacco exposure during pregnancy also puts babies at really increased risk for SIDS. So if we jump to the next slide, and we can talk a little bit about our philosophy behind how safe sleep can save lives. And we truly believe that as a parent, one of the most decisions you'll make is how and where you place your baby to sleep. The safest place for your baby to sleep is in a crib or a play yard that meets current safety standards. And I understand there may be questions around that. I know there's concern, the drop side cribs that have come out recently. And despite the few deaths that have been caused by those kinds of things, that safe crib, that safety standard crib that is assembled correctly is really still the best place for your baby to sleep. Play yards are great because they're portable. They can be put alongside your bed. And those also, because most of them now are made with mesh, which is really great because it allows the baby to get fresh air. So those are the two things that you need to give your baby the most protection against SIDS, suffocation, and accidents during sleep. Always place your baby on his or her back to sleep. The side and tummy positions are just not safe. Originally, 10 years ago, and a little bit before that, the American Academy of Pediatrics said that side sleeping was okay. But what we have found over the years is that those babies that are placed on their sides are much more likely to tip and roll to their tummy. So babies that are normally sleeping on their backs or their sides, that first time they get to their tummy, they're 18 times more likely to die from SIDS because they're just not used to that position. So this is why it's important to really keep your caregivers in the loop. Make sure that everybody understands how you're caring for your baby, and that's consistent, whether it's a daycare provider, a babysitter, or a grandparent. So these babies just really, really need to be on their back until they can learn developmentally, to roll around, which they all do, and we want them to do that, and that's a good thing.
The firmness, does this recommendation also come into play? We've read a lot about tummy time for infants. So do you make a differentiation between as a child is awake and alert while with a parent versus while they're sleeping?
Absolutely.
Or is the recommendation to kind of have an infant on their back until they're comfortable enough to roll?
No, definitely not. We want babies to have tummy time when they're awake and being supervised right from day one. Because they spend so much time sleeping on their back, and that's a good thing, we need to make sure that they get tummy time during the day. Again, I can't emphasize enough when they're being supervised. This allows them to exercise their chest and neck muscles as well as their upper arms. Really gives them time to develop those motor skills so that when they do start rolling over, they have the strength to either lift their head or turn their head or roll back over. So tummy time is very important during the day when they're awake and when they're being supervised. Another concern that a lot of parents have in that regard is because babies are sleeping on their back, they tend to develop sometimes a little flat spot on the back of their head. We want parents to know that that is not a problem. You know, eventually as they start rolling and sitting and crawling, that flat spot's going to go away, but I know a lot of parents are really nervous about it. So tummy time really helps that. Not leaving them in car seats and swings and bouncy chairs for long periods of time can also help prevent those flat spots. Changing the arm that you feed them in helps the flat spots. Turning their head the opposite way in the crib helps the flat spots. So there's things that you can do to be proactive, but you know it's very rarely a problem that the baby is going to keep a misshapen head for the rest of their life. Once they start moving around, the hair grows in, the skull rounds out, and by a year of age you won't even know that they had that little flat spot on the back of their
head. It all comes out in the wash as their skull grows.
Yes.
So
yes.
We have another question in from the audience, and this was kind of, I think, appropriate at this time. There was a question from one of our attendees that asked about the ultimate crib sheet. So from what I know, that's a crib sheet that also has kind of a mattress pad built into it. So in your opinion, and from what I've heard before, your thoughts are firm mattress and sheet only without a mattress pad. So I'm assuming, unless you know otherwise, that something with a crib sheet and the mattress pad put in with an absorbent pad, does that kind of conform to the research that you've read, or would you be more apt to recommend just straight, tight-fitting sheet over a mattress?
I would definitely be more apt to recommend the flat-fitted sheet over the mattress, only because, and there are, I'm sure a lot of you know and have heard, there are a lot of products coming out now that say that they're breathable. But the problem is, first of all, we still want to make sure that the babies are on their backs. We don't want any products that are going to make us feel comfortable putting the babies on their tummy. And the Ultimate Crib Sheet, I don't know of it specifically. It might be fine, but again, our recommendation is just the thin crib sheet over the mattress, so when that baby does turn, even if it's breathable, we can't be sure, is that baby rebreathing fresh air, or is that baby rebreathing his own exhaled air? So that can still be a concern. So what we consider to be the least risky is the firm mattress with just the sheet covering it.
Okay.
And so, that takes us to the next bullet. We've been talking about firm mattress. That's just really, really important. So we want the crib, we want the firm mattress and the sheet, and really you don't need anything else in that crib. That is all you need. You should never put anything soft, loose, or fluffy in the baby's sleep space. And then you lay the baby on its back, and you either layer the clothing or use a wearable blanket instead of loose blankets to keep the baby warm. So as far as products go and this vision of us creating a safe sleep zone, that's all you need. Anything else can kind of increase the risk of something going wrong. On the slide that Jack has up right now, we've got a great illustration. You see there the baby on its back, you see the firm mattress. Even if this baby starts scooting around or rolling around, there's nothing in there that is going to get next to that baby's face that could increase the risk of SIDS or suffocation.
So that kind of comes to the next question. Typically children, whether they're 4 to 6 months old, maybe a little younger, a little bit older, when they start to roll on their own. So as you put a child to sleep on their back, and then you come in the morning and they're kind of rolled over on their tummy, what are your thoughts or recommendations around that?
We like to, especially, as long as we can, and babies start rolling over at all different ages. We know that I had one that rolled over at 3 months, one that didn't roll over till 6 months. They're going to do it, and again, we want them to do that. We don't want to restrict them because that's part of their normal development. But what you need to do once you know that your baby is starting to wiggle around or roll around, again, it's just more important to make sure that there's nothing in that sleep area that can either cover the baby's face or that they can get their face next to. When they first start doing it, if you're awake, you can flip them back. But we also want everybody to get a lot of sleep, so we don't want moms to stay up all night flipping the baby back and flipping the baby back because then nobody's going to get any rest.
Now, I did notice here you have a bullet point, and in your illustration you have a pacifier. So pacifiers are good.
Pacifiers are good, and there may be some people out there that, feel otherwise or have heard otherwise. This is fairly new research within the last 5 years, and it's still holding out. Pacifiers can actually very significantly reduce the risk of SIDS. We don't know the exact mechanism as why several of the thought processes are, and I have to kind of reiterate that regular use of the pacifier. So babies need to start using the pacifiers early on, and that provides the most protective. So if you have a baby that hasn't used a pacifier for 3 months, and then you start using one, it's not going to have as much of a protective factor. The biggest concern that comes into play with that are breastfeeding moms. We encourage totally breastfeeding. It's so important, and it's just really critical to the baby's overall health. But we really want breastfeeding to be established before you start using a pacifier. Now, there's different theories on when that is, but I think most moms know when breastfeeding is going well. We say usually anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. So once breastfeeding is established, we definitely recommend when you lay your baby down to sleep, every time he goes to sleep, whether it's nap time or nighttime, offer the pacifier. And then, and again, because research has yet to go further, eventually those pacifiers fall out of their mouth. That's okay. They are still protected. I think the main train of thought is the pacifiers stimulate their sucking reflex, which can keep their airways open more because they're sucking more. It also can maybe keep the baby from rolling over because they don't want to lose the pacifier. So there's several different things that they think make it protective, but the results coming in are even up to even a 95% reduction rate in SIDS with babies that use